Hi there, I'm Melody Bacon, licensed clinical psychologist.
And I'm Ron Bacon, licensed marriage and family therapist and husband to Melody Bacon.
Yes, and partner at
Yes, we are.
Relationship Visions. And we have this YouTube channel, Relationship University, about all things to do with relationships. And in this episode, we would like to talk about the 12 steps of AA that has been used in many other capacities.
Mm,
And we have done workshops and presented the 12 steps as a way to think about your own journey in life, regardless of whether or not you are struggling with a chemical addiction. And so we thought this was a good time to talk about at least the first three steps of the 12 steps with regard to things in your life that are uncontrollable and what do you do about it.
yeah. So, to do a little university type thing, we'll talk a little bit, just very briefly, about philosophy
Okay?
because that's really what the 12 steps are. It's a
Yes,
philosophy, it's a way
they
of
are.
going. And what is a philosophy? You have one.
Mm-hmm.
We all have them, although we're not always aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get aware, because what you do is coming right out of your philosophical assumptions. So,
Yeah, what you do and how you perceive and how you respond.
yes, yeah,
Because we know that what we see is often a factor of what we already are expecting to see or believe to be the case, and then we respond based on that belief
hmm
system.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
so we have a philosophy of life.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that we
Right.
have. I think we're born with an idea that life is supposed to be fair. If you have kids
Mm-hmm.
and you divide something up and one gets it first, the other one will almost invariably say that isn't fair.
Right, or they'll be measuring to make sure
Yes.
that they're, if
Who?
it's cake, they're the
Yes.
same size cake.
So some, I didn't think of this, but some brilliant person did said this person you cut and the other one chooses,
Yeah.
and that ends up being somewhat fair, so that you have one person cutting very as close to center as possible, and the other one choosing in their best interest.
Yes.
And so everybody gets to have a piece of that. But a philosophy that would be working out of something that life should be fair. As
Mm-hmm.
adults, we realize life isn't fair.
Yeah.
In fact, you do all the right things, and sometimes you don't get the better result, not in the short run. And so we begin to question then. And those people
Mm-hmm.
who end up not having a philosophy of life can
Mm-hmm.
end up being quite bitter, saying that life is absurd, there's no rules, there's no anything that works, it's all just suffering and then you die.
Well, the bitterness comes from what psychologists will call core beliefs, and those are defaults. For example, if you have the belief system that no matter what I do,
Mm,
it's not going to work out, then of course, because most of the time we try things, they don't work out, it'll be reinforced by that. You'll be saying, see, I told you.
mm-hmm,
What will happen is you'll reinforce that belief, but you will negate the times things do work out as a fluke or that just happened, as opposed to saying, well, maybe that's evidence for the fact that sometimes things do work out. If you have the belief system that I'm always going to get the short end of the stick, or I should always get uh, the 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 best of everything, and when I don't, I'm being deprived. So these are all ways that psychologists work to help people identify these core beliefs so
mm-hmm,
that they can start to say, okay, well, let me look at the evidence for that and evaluate it. Who who decided that I should always get what I want?
mm,
Maybe I could prefer to get what I want. That's reasonable, but the demand that I have to get what I want or I'll be miserable is where you get into trouble.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's another way of looking at a philosophy. It doesn't have to be like an Aristotelian or Plato, kind of big full out philosophy. It may just be some defaults that you have that you know by working backward. When you're feeling miserable, the idea is, what are you telling yourself? Because it's usually a very all or nothing kind of statement like that.
Living in the United States and any Western Western world country, is to say that you are influenced by Christianity. You may not be personally a Christian, but you are influenced by that. And part of the Christian philosophy are things that don't occur to people. You know, they're revolutionary. The last will be first. Well, that doesn't seem accurate, and yet there's a different way of thinking about it. That there's outside agencies that God will level the playing field. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. So there's that idea that I don't have to settle the score myself. That there's the philosophy would be that I can let go and let God. That's coming straight from the 12-step traditions and sayings that, and they borrow from that. Tradition that there is an agency outside of you.
Well, there's a idea that serving others will bring you joy.
Yes.
Which seems to go against our natural inclination. Releasing things that you can't control to a higher power will bring you peace. And it's actually the trying to control the uncontrollable that brings you into misery. And in terms of addiction, thinking you control the substance that's your addiction, when in fact it's controlling you. And then what do you do? Because I think the first step, so if we'd let people know what the first steps are. So I'll let you do.
The first step begins with the first word, we. And so as soon as somebody says, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable, they are saying they're a part of a fellowship. To say we, is, they could have said, I admitted that I am powerless over alcohol, and they didn't. Because doing this on your own, that terminal uniqueness, it's all about me, is kind of what gets an alcoholic to where they are. And so there's already an admission. They're part of a fellowship. There's other people just like them. They're not as unique as they may feel like they are.
Right.
And there's some humility in that. Who doesn't want to feel special? To be especially picked on by the creator of the universe. I mean, how much more special can that be?
Right.
You know, and so to get off of that, saying, you know, I'm just not that special.
Right. The Buddhists have a saying, dare to be ordinary.
Yes. Yeah. So these, when you see it in various major religions, it's often a universal truth.
Yeah. So how about this idea, though, of recognizing we're powerless? Because many people, that is a big stumbling block. It sounds like you're being passive. You're just accepting karma. You're not doing anything. Some people who are not addicts or alcoholics will say it's just giving people an excuse. I can't help it. I'm an alcoholic. I have no power. Or people who aren't outside of that realm want to say, well, you're just, kind of rolling over and playing dead, so to speak, and not recognizing your efficacy in terms of overcoming your addiction.
Powerlessness isn't the same thing as helplessness.
Okay.
We are not saying we admitted that we are helpless. You know, it's powerless. And that's why alcohol is considered a cunning and baffling disease, because somebody who can have a thought and say, wow, that's something I can do, whether it's build a house, whether it's build a business, whether it's put together some machinery. Here are people who could do any of those things. If they put their mind to it, they can do it. And then there's alcohol, and they realize, when I drink, there's problem for the people I love, there's problems for me. I'm going to stop doing it. And then they don't stop doing it, and they cannot understand it. And they keep trying different ways to do it. Oh, I got in trouble when I drank whiskey, so now I'll only drink beer.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work. And, all the various things
Yep.
of trying it, until finally saying, no matter what I try, it doesn't work. That's the admission of powerlessness. I cannot control this.
Yeah, Dr. Kevin McCauley, who created a wonderful video called Pleasure Unwoven, and recommend you watch it. It's on YouTube, I believe. It's Pleasure Unwoven, and he is a physician who had his own personal journey with addiction, and he wanted to evaluate for himself as a physician, is addiction a disease or a choice? And he takes you through each of the steps, but one of the things he points out, where he finally comes to the realization that it's a disease, that willpower is not the problem or lack thereof, that people actually who have an addiction or alcohol addiction really have quite a bit of willpower. It's just that, just like any other muscle, willpower eventually, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we're powerless over something is really an existential reality. And existential means just there's certain facts of our existence. And one of them is that we're powerless over many things. We're powerless over our own death at some point. We can't avoid it. We can try to put it off and live healthful lives. But at the end of the day, that's going to be something we all share as human beings. We're often powerless over many things that happen to us, despite our best efforts. That doesn't mean you don't try to navigate it. I think a good analogy for me is you're in a fast-moving river on a boat, raft that you're navigating. You don't have the power to go upstream. You can try for a while, but you'll get exhausted at some point and you'll still be going downstream. But you don't have to just lie there in the boat while it just goes wherever. You can steer the boat and you can get it through the rapids and you can navigate as you're going downstream. But the power of that river is going to take you in that direction. So you're how going to navigate. And I think that's recognizing that I'm powerless. I may want to go back upstream, but I don't have the power to do that. Yet, what can I do? And I can navigate with intention and purpose.
So once a person has admitted that they're powerless over alcohol, that their life has become unmanageable, and they've joined the fellowship of other people who've made the same admission, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity is the second step. And that's a big step for many people. No question about it. What does that mean? What kind of came to believe a power greater than ourselves? They're not saying get out your Bible and read about God. Some people do that. And others say they can't believe in the God of the Bible for various reasons. But that they need something that's going to aid them in overcoming an obsession for alcohol, that they think about it. And that's something that's hard to measure.
Yes.
A person with it knows how often they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And how long can you, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, to have the obsession lifted. A person can stay abstinent for a long time and have that obsession working away.
Right.
And it's insufficient to maintain serenity and peace.
Right. You're working very hard to not drink or use.
Right.
Or worry. So if we extrapolate this to a larger issue,
for people who don't have the disease of alcoholism.
Your main source of anxiety, let's say it's your finances, or it's whether your kid's going to get through college, or whether they are getting married and you don't like that person. You just pick where your brain is focusing to the point where you can't get it to stop going back to that same worry. My way of testing that is, what do I wake up with already worrying about? I'm obviously not in control or powerful over that, because why would I start out the day? I'm not even fully conscious. And that is whatever the worry is, the anxiety is, that's what I have to give to my higher power for that day, because I am not able to get that out of my life at that moment. And the anxiety is more powerful than I am at getting it to stop, my brain to stop, going back to that same point.
So the idea that came to believe that what people come up with, they need something that they can turn the obsession over to, God as they understand God to be. That typically that's going to be whatever is somebody's higher power. It's got to be something that is on their side, that it has at least enough, they're benign, that they're not against you. The evil God, it's like, well, that's powerful, but I don't need something that wants to consume or kill me.
That would be your addiction.
Yeah, exactly. That's alcohol, or, the
chemical addiction.
Any chemical is that. So something that is on your side and wants your best, however you conceive that. This isn't about a higher power, isn't something that you can create, because that would be a lower power.
Yeah.
Something you can create is something that you can contain inside your own imagination. That doesn't mean humans haven't done some amazing things, but they're still not a higher power.
Well, and AA calls it the God of our understanding.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a fully thought out, and I think it's a good way to put it anyway, because it's always the God of our understanding. We're quite limited.
Yeah.
But there has to be a power that's greater than your substance, your addiction, or the worry, anxiety, the obsession that you have with, whatever is going on in your life. Something has to be bigger than that to take that obsession away. And that can be a process that people have to spend some time with. It could be an experience of what they call transcendence, an experience where you all of a sudden are experiencing something greater than you. I've had a few clients who are surfers, and they have that when they're sitting out on the ocean on their surfboards. Their experience is there's a greater power than them, literally, that they're sitting on. But I've seen it with people who hike and go into the wilderness. People who are serving others at the food bank, and in that process are aware there's something greater here than all of us together. We're all here, but something else is here. And it doesn't have to have a name or a theology. But it's that sense of getting plugged into being part of somebody.
For those who are Americans, our founders thought of the one who put natural law in, and that's what our rights were based on, is natural law. And so they attributed that to the Creator, Creator, that they didn't know about DNA and the information that's contained. It's DNA is an information transmission system. Whoever, that entity that put information in DNA is something that is greater than I can conceive.
So you've got the first step, which is
admission,
recognizing we are powerless. The second one is
came to believe
that we have a higher power greater than us. And then what would be the third step?
The third step is then humbly asking that power to take control. That a benevolent higher power isn't going to take you captive. That it's like,
or say no.
It's a hostage situation. It's like, wait a minute, I don't want to be anybody's hostage. And but that if we ask, and give our lives over to, that's different than hostage taking.
Yeah, it's a submission to a greater power that has your best interest at heart, and that in so doing, you become more aligned with some greater purpose in your life than just that immediate whatever's, the anxiety is focused on. And for those of us who are going through a challenging time now, and sometimes right now it's more global, but for many people, these situations come up where a loved one has a terminal illness. A loved one is in the military and shipped to a war zone. We're facing a health crisis. These things come up. Our job is threatened, or we lose it. So these are all things that are part of life, and each of these times can create fear and panic and confusion and overwhelm. And that's where the 12 steps, at least the first 3, they all are good, but we'll just go over the first 3 in this session, can help you start to get back onto a kind of balanced response, because you're giving to your higher power what you can't control, so that you can then see what you can do in terms of taking the next step. And I think the reason why one day at a time is such a big focus for AA is that trying to imagine a whole lifetime is going to be too overwhelming. And people who are struggling with alcoholism, they'll just drink. For those of us trying to imagine giving up whatever we're anxious about for a whole life right this minute isn't going to happen, but we can do it for today, and maybe just for the next hour or two. That is manageable, and I think that's part of what the 12 steps try to do as well.
We may have to come back again, that for many people, for all of us, our very first higher power is our parents.
Right.
And if you think of your parents and how once you became an adult or started entering that and seeing their flaws, their imperfections, when you were an infant and you looked up, these were powers greater than you.
True.
And they kept you alive, for better or for worse.
Yep.
And that can get in the way once you start realizing, because even as an infant, you were taking in information, and you may have incorporated some of that image into your own concept of what a higher power is.
That's true.
And you may have to deconstruct some of that because you may have too much human power involved where higher power needs to be.
That's a good point. So hopefully you'll explore the 12 steps of AA. You can look it up online. There's plenty of information, even if you're not personally struggling with chemical addiction. And start working it. If you love someone who's struggling, even more so, because you're powerless over that person's addiction. And I think in general, it's a great plan for how to move through life with less chaos, anxiety, and panic, and toward a life that has meaning and purpose and value. So until next time, check out the Family Matters program, and check out our website, Relationship Visions Inc., INC, relationshipvisionsinc.com, and we will see you next time.